everyone, and welcome to another episode of Rare Book Cafe, the Coffee Break Edition. I'm Lee Lynn at the Ridge Books in Calhoun, Georgia, and joined as usual today by my co-host Richard Morey of Morey Rare Books in Nashua, New Hampshire, who has his Rare Book Cafe
Yes.
coffee mug,
Well, good
as
morning,
as
Lee.
do as do I, and Matt Whalen from Lakeland, Florida. Matt's the newest member of our happy little Rare Book Cafe family here, and we are delighted to have him and his tech skills. Um, and I know, Richard, you got to go to the New York show
I did.
last
I
week.
had I initially hadn't planned to do it, but I came up with a very good reason, which had to do with that piece I showed everybody last week,
Right.
which I don't own anymore, by the way. Uh,
Oh, that was quick.
it was a very quick turnaround. You didn't see it, Josh and Sunny, but I had picked up last week a signed Profiles in Courage,
Nice.
first edition, and
Signed to a New Hampshire
U.S. Senator.
senator.
Yeah, yeah, Cotton. So
Oh,
it
that's a good one.
Norris Cotton. So I don't own it anymore. So, but that was kind of part of my motivation. But always to see friends down there. I saw Sunday and Josh for a brief moment. Sunday couldn't even get away from people and even just hardly wave at me. She was so busy, and but everybody on the floor, it was wonderful to see. They were excited, and since we brought this up, and Josh and Sunday from B&B Rare Books are here today to talk about something else more interesting. But you guys were at the New York Fair. What'd you think?
It was great. The fair is always wonderful. I think this is our 16th New York Book Fair. I can't believe it's been that many. It's my fifth book fair as chair. I can't believe that's been that long either. But it was wonderful. You know, every year we go in with high hopes. And we had 174 exhibitors, and almost everyone that I spoke to said that they had a great show. People were busy. The gate was up. There were more visitors than ever on every single day. So those things are all the metrics we use to say, you know, was this a good fair? And it seems like everybody was very, very happy with it. And also, too, last year, I feel like we've been having good fairs since COVID, but uh, last year there seemed to be like some sort of heavy cloud, that was kind of over everyone. I think institutions kind of had their budget slashed, and people were feeling that. And this year, you know, political climate's still what it is, but in general, everybody just felt a lightness, and I think that was felt kind of universally. Everyone felt that, you know, things were trending in the right direction, and people were feeling good in the room. People were spending money. Booksellers were selling books. So I think all in all, it was a really great fair.
Well, I certainly agree with you about the lightness. It was a nice, comfortable atmosphere. Of course, the wine didn't hurt. That was being served
That
in
helps.
the back of the
Yeah.
room Thursday night. And the beer, you know, I'm sure that helped a little bit, but no, but there was really just a nice, comfortable crowd. Everybody was smiling. People were buying in furies almost. And I heard there were some very notables on the floor. Alan Gershwin, Alan, not Gershwin, is it Gershowitz?
Dershowitz.
Yeah, Alan Gershowitz I saw several times in Richard Thorne's booth. And Richard said he actually bought something from him. And I heard there were some other notables on the floor as well.
There were, yeah. So Jesse Paris Smith and Patty Smith are two of our ambassadors. They come to the fair every year, and what's great about that is they also bring their circle. Michael Stipe was there, the lead singer of REM, and I got to talk to him for like 5 minutes. Actually, it was a personally like very satisfying moment. He
Uh,
was very kind. We talked about photography. He's really smart. He's
Well,
really
and
cool.
he's, of course, from my neck of the woods.
Ah, is he?
Well, it's Athens.
Oh my gosh, that's
You know,
great.
REM was an Athens band originally, and um, um, yeah, I have never personally met him, but he did. Howard Finster, who is a outsider folk artist here in Georgia, was here in Georgia, did album covers for REM,
Oh, cool.
and and my husband was over there at Finster's art environment one day when Michael Stipe was there, and And my children have always said, "Why didn't you get his autograph?" But yeah, that's a big name in Georgia music, of course, of course.
Amazing.
So, and we felt that same way about the Atlanta show. The mobs of people were buying. They were not considering things. They were coming in and saying, "I want that," which was a great feeling, a great feeling to have at a show. So
Yeah.
That's what everyone wants.
Yeah. In light of the economy, the concern I think among many of us in the floating in the back of our minds is, when is the buying going to stop? But it's not stopping. I mean, the Atlanta, I was in Manassas, Virginia, same thing. Allentown, Pennsylvania, same thing. People just out buying.
yeah, and my results at Florida this year were exponentially better than last year.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was good. And it seems to be carrying over. My one of my sons is an artist, and he did a show in Clayton, Georgia this weekend, and there were not very big crowds, but they were buying crowds, and they were buying good sized pieces, fairly expensive things. And so he was very happy with the weekend, even though the crowds were not there. It was kind of weird, kind of
That's
a weird
great.
thing.
So
As long as they're spending.
I noticed Matt must have lost his connection and is now back. So good.
Just got a text
Well,
message.
we have been hinting at having Josh, who is only with us in audio and Sunday, for several weeks now. And Richard was kind enough to get this set up for us. And I'm going to sort of let Richard take over at this point. We got excited over something that was in the newspaper. And you don't find a lot about antiquarian books in the newspaper. So anyway, Richard, I'll let you kind of take over from
So,
here.
girl, thank you, Lee. I'm going to ask Josh because he's been so patiently quiet, which I think must be a little unusual Sunday. But anyways, give us a little bit of a background first, Josh, if you would, as to what has built this moment up. And I'm sure there was a little bit of a buzz about this at the Antiquarian Show in New York. So what was the short background as to why you were on the front page of the New York Times?
Thank you for that. So, I mean, the beginning of the story really more commences with, Sunday's experience of this, and I'm sure she can add quite a lot of color to it. But I'll tell you what my day was when I actually first got the phone call from Sunday. This always happens when I have the day off. So I, in fact, had the day off. And I get sort of an urgent call from Sunday that I had to go into work that day, which wasn't the plan. And we always have this running joke: there's no such thing as a rare book emergency. And in this case, I guess there was one. So Sunday was there in the shop with our cataloger, and a young man with a suitcase of books rolled in with books that, might or might not have been his, but of course he was claiming they were. And Sunday discovered the finely bound volume of the letters of John Keats to Fanny Brawne, which, it's a published book. But what was unique to this book is that 8 of the original letters were in fact bound into the book, facing their transcribed leaves. So that's sort of how my day started, was, getting in my car, rushing down there to sort this out and figure out what's going on before we had any idea or before we even started questioning, title or, what the next steps were. It was really just initially evaluating a situation where, not every day you have something this special walk into your shop.
Did you believe me?
That's sort of how it
Did you
started.
believe me when I told you that? Or did you think I was
Oh,
crazy?
I believed you, but it was like it was just kind of surreal. I was just like, you just didn't think something like that was possible or existed, and then how and why did it show up in our shop that day with some guy that was like 26, 27 years old, in a suitcase, because he just came into the city from Penn Station and said, we were basically his first stop.
So Sunday,
And
there's the bookseller in me is wanting to know what was the tip to you that said, "Oh my gosh."
That the letters were real, or that they weren't his, because actually, honestly, both happened right away. We've been doing this for 22 years. I can't believe it's been that long. But sadly, we've had the experience where we've bought stolen books before. We've learned from the situation, and we're in New York. We're a shop on Madison Avenue, so we get offered a lot of things. So sometimes when things turn up stolen, we get offered material. In general, I don't know. It's sort of like there's sort of a profile. It's usually someone that shows up without an appointment. They usually have the books in a backpack or in a dirty old suitcase like this guy did. The books are never well taken care of. They're usually in plastic Ziploc bags. They're not in bubble, nothing like that. So that's sort of generally, and it sounds silly and like it's too easy to kind of pinpoint that. But honestly, whenever that happens, someone shows up like that and I'm like, those books are stolen. And most of the time, like the story is sort of strange and vague. So we usually just sort of shoo them away, like we're not interested. But yeah, so I came to work and Wyatt, our cataloger, was there, and he was, standing in the middle of the room. There's a guy sitting on the floor with, 30 or 40 books, around him on the floor with a suitcase. And I just looked and I was like, oh boy, this is going to be interesting. And then I looked on our display case and there was a large book on there already. And I was like, well, let me look at this one first. And I pick it up and it's this beautifully bound Riviere binding. It's a larger book and beautiful gilt, and it says letters of John Keats to Fanny Brawne, and I'm like, oh, that's interesting, because there is like an 1878 book where all of the letters are transcribed, and it's like kind of famous edition of everything printed. And then I see inside it says with 8 original letters noted on the in pencil on the front end paper. And I am like, sure,
and it's
that's
also
not
stamped
true.
on the spine as well of the
It
binding.
is, yes, yes. And it's all kind of very slowly piecing together, like, what? Are you serious? Like really? Really? And then I flip to the first page and there it is right away. The very first letter that he ever wrote her. It's it was with the self envelope, with just her address written on the back of it. Some of the wax seal is still there. It's still present. I knew right away it was genuine. And then I'm flipping through and I see that indeed there are 8 of them, as the spine and the pencil notation on the end paper says there's 8. And my first thought is just, how are these here? What happened? How did these get into my shop right now? Also, my second thought was, how are these all together? Because I know that there's only 39 letters total in the entire world, that were saved, and are most of them are in institutions. And I'm like, how are 8 of them bound into one volume? I wonder if anyone knows that 8 out of 39 are here. And then I look at the guy on the floor and I'm like, they're not his. I don't know.
It didn't match
I don't
up.
know where he got this, but these aren't his. There's something going on here. So I start looking, and Wyatt always says, you gave me the look. And I'm like, I must have given them the look, like what's going on? And I just thought to myself, I have to figure out how to get him to leave them here, because I don't want them to walk out. If they walk out, I'll never see them again. I don't know what's going to happen to them. I've known in the past that, whenever we call the police about stolen books, there's usually not a lot they can do. They usually state like, well, how do you know they're stolen? Is there a police report you can point me to? Has someone reported them stolen? Otherwise it's just some sort of, his word against his or whatever, that can be settled in court. And in general, like that usually happens much later. So I'm thinking like, I have to just figure out how to get them to stay here. I just have to do some more research, find who they belong to, and then, that's what I need to do.
Well,
Well, how did he pick your shop out? Or was it he
So
just happened upon it?
sure. So Josh, you said he emailed us initially, but we just didn't respond, right?
Yeah, we got an email through our website like a couple days before, and we just hadn't responded to it yet because it came in over the weekend, and I guess he showed up in our shop before we even had a chance to respond to the email. Yeah.
He said that we were the closest to, I don't know if he came through Grand Central or Penn, but he said basically we were the closest one to, and we are very close to both train stations. So I think we were just the first stop of many. And I'm glad it was us, because, I know what we did, but I don't know, what would have happened if he had gone someplace else.
Yeah. I mean, the amazing thing is that, and I told Josh the story a while ago, I had a similar experience only in terms of the theft, not in terms of the significance, 30 years ago. And in fact, my mentor taught me this, early on. If you find ex-library books that aren't ex-library books, you return them to the institution, or, be aware that people are going to bring you stolen merchandise. It's my belief if a bookseller hasn't bought accidentally stolen books in their career, they haven't been doing it long enough, because it's likely to happen just because the way of the world, you can't know everything and know every situation. Yeah. Seldom do we see something of this magnitude in terms of its importance in the literary world.
I'm curious, just because of the circumstances where this sort of thing tends to happen. Sometimes people actually are the thieves and walk into shops like what you have with books like this. Other times, in cases such as this, where the book's been missing for a long time, maybe they got it out of a storage unit that they purchased or something like that, or they got it from a family member and they didn't know it was stolen. Do we have any insight that you could share as far as if this person was in fact the original thief, or I'm assuming not given the age, or if they acquired it through what they thought was legitimate means?
Yeah, so we can comment someone on that. So the case is actually still open. So there's things we can't comment about. But what I will say is that this story was very vague. It was like, oh, these are my grandfather's books. They've been sitting in an attic for 40 years. And that was basically all he would give us. There was really nothing more than that. And sometimes when people inherit books, that actually is all they have. But it just didn't seem right. Like whenever we were asking more information about his family, about his grandfather, most people are forthcoming. They'll tell you stories, about the person and where they grew up and whatnot. And he was just very sort of guarded and just kept insisting that there was nothing more to say. But yeah, so yeah, you're right. There's like always like a lot of different ways that like books come to us. And what we eventually did find out, I don't know how you want to go through and tell the story, but basically, yeah, the person who brought them into us was not the person who stole them, because we found it out eventually that they had been stolen a long time before he was born. He said at that point, the district attorney took over the case. So, we were out of that part of it. But from what we've heard, it's a difficult situation because, yeah, he couldn't have stolen them because he was so young. And again, too, also, that was also something that tipped us off, that he was, so young. And again, people have vague stories sometimes because they don't have a lot of information, but like just nothing was adding up. Like he was saying, well, my grandfather, didn't have a lot of money to buy, to spend on books. So, he was buying things at secondhand shops, in the, I don't know, whatever decade, the 40s or 50s. But I'm just like, there's no instance in which this book, how important it is, would have been missed by a bookseller or a scout or an auction house or something where this would have ended up on a dusty shelf for $1. Absolutely no way. This book it looked like it was Revere, so it was bound sometime prior to, I forget when Revere was absorbed into Bainton, but sometime in the 1930s. So it's prior to 1930. So someone knew that these letters were important and had them bound into this special, like sumptuous binding. It's gorgeous before then. And there's no way that after that, even if grandfather died and then the heirs don't know what they have, there's no way this would have slipped through somewhere and like ended up on a shelf for $1, that sort of thing. So I think it's all signs are pointing to this was probably taken, well, it was owned by a prominent family first of all, and then it probably was stolen from them, and who knows when that had happened, basically.
Yeah. So
Right.
Josh,
But our suspicions weren't just limited to the one book, however. It was the range of material that was brought in. I mean, this was a collector that clearly had like vision and knowledge, and then the nature of the material and the bindings just sort of reeked of early 20th, late 19th century, so there were book plates from other notable collectors from the 19th and 20th century, and everything kept pointing to the same time period. So it wasn't like one guy ended up with a random book. I mean, this was someone that was actively collecting in the 20s and 30s, which is sort of when this sort of trails off. So there was a theme to the material as well. So this was a collector with vision, So, usually if you have a family member that has some type of vision in their collecting, you would recognize that. And none of that was recognized in this situation, other than us seeing this range of material and realizing these were definitely owned by a notable collector. So we need to learn more about who that collector was. So that's why we kind of set on this journey over the course of 2 months.
Yeah. And so when did you discover, because the New York Times article mentions the family from Long Island, when did you discover that family's name?
After
it took about a month.
6 weeks of,
6 weeks, a month. What I started doing was,
and it was, it was the police report. I mean, it was the police report that led us in that direction. So everything was sort of dancing around, like, and pointing towards a family, such as the Whitneys. But we didn't have the name yet until we found the police report from 1989.
Yeah, and before that, basically what I started doing was I spent like 5 hours on my couch every single night for like a month, 2 months. I was writing emails to librarians of people that have the letters. Harvard's got 8 of them. NYPL's got 1. Rosenbach has 1 or 2, I think. So I was writing to collections librarians. I wrote to to our beloved ABAA discuss list and iLab, our international association that keeps a stolen books database. We were checking there, nothing. We were calling police precincts on Long Island, because the person who brought the books to us was from Long Island. We were calling the Nassau Police Precinct. We were calling all of the ones in New York, thinking like it probably came from some estate in Manhattan. We were calling old booksellers saying, do you remember selling a book like this, to a family? Or do you remember like a family that would have been collecting like this? We called Bainton, the bindery, and said, do you have records from Riviere from 1930? Who commissioned this binding? That would have been a good clue. And, there were no records that had been retained from that time period. So it took, Josh was talking to an auction specialist, and it took her suggesting to us, why don't you try the art loss registry, which we didn't know existed. And even if we had known existed, we didn't know that books were on it. So we had to pay for a search. Josh, this is your part of it.
Yeah. So this was sort of like in a sort of last act of desperation, because we were at the point where we're like, we still haven't proven that these were stolen. We were just acting on suspicion. And so, we did an expedited search with Art Loss, which I believe cost like around £400 or £500, but they get you a response within, 24 hours. And we really weren't expecting a result, but because, we were truly losing sleep over this, I had checked my email at like, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And because Art Loss is based in London, so I got an email from them, and, they sent a copy of a police report asking if this is in fact the same volume that we have in our possession. And I confirmed it immediately, and then forwarded everything onto our lawyer and be like, we finally have a hit, and then this is when really everything just really started to unfold, which is once we confirmed we had possession of the book, Art Loss has their own protocol, and they reach out to local authorities, and then we got a call from the antiquity unit, and the head of that unit, the DA in New York, to basically tell us to hold on to the book while they secure warrants and to get everything back. So that's when we were finally relieved, because now I felt like we really had someone working with us when the DA took over.
So you really had a lot of skin in the game, your time, your energy, and even your dollars or pounds.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, dollars and pounds. Yeah.
We assumed paying for that search would have just been more sunk money. And, Josh had mentioned lawyer. At this point, we had refused to give the book back. So now the thief was suing us, saying, you need to relinquish this book to us. And we were like, no, we're not going to do it. So in true movie fashion, I think, the timing of this Art Loss hit could not have been better, because I think we were supposed to be in court in Nassau County the very next day. And had that not come in, we would have had to show up to court. The judge might have said, listen, you have no evidence to show that this book is not this person's, so you have to give it back. So we were just desperate, we have to find something before we go to court. So with that Art Loss hit, we called our lawyer, and he said, yeah, I informed the other attorney, you don't have to come to court today. The DA is going to take over the case from now, and then you'll hear from him, and we'll just keep you monitoring about what's going on. But in the meantime, keep the book. You don't have to come to court.
Well,
and it's suing you?
Yeah, he was suing us. Yeah, up until this week, we just found out from our lawyer literally 2 days ago that he finally dropped the lawsuit. Even though the books had been relinquished about a year ago. I guess, I don't know. He was still, I don't know. Yeah.
Lazy.
So there was a lawsuit against us, and obviously we're incurring legal fees, and mostly it's just the time. We basically dropped 2 months of our lives to just focus on this completely. And also we thought all in all, it'll be great in the end if we can just find who it belongs to, return it to that person. That would be great. If they want to sell it, if we can represent it, that would be great too. But no matter what, we just want it to go back to where it has to go, and we want it to be treasured and valued. We don't want to give it back to this person who we know does not own it.
There's a movie to be made from this.
Yes.
You only just started thinking about who you want to play you in a Hollywood blockbuster. There's a movie to be made from this. I'm not even kidding.
The question is, what role does Johnny Depp play in it?
Ooh, yeah.
No, he had his chance. He already had his chance as a bookseller.
Josh, yeah. I think he would be Bogdanos, who's the DA from the Antiquities Trafficking.
Oh, he gets to be the DA now.
I think so, because I think he could play that well, because this guy's a really interesting character. He created this unit, literally it's called the Antiquities Trafficking Unit, out of nowhere. It was, I think, his baby to make this own department upon him for himself, where they go after lost art. Most of the time it's art and antiques. But it's a very high profile team that works, out of Lower Manhattan. And I think Johnny Depp would be good for that part.
So we should, for those who may see this, we have a huge audience, I think, of 25, but no, but the reference to the movie, I've made the reference to Johnny Depp, and it's actually a reference to a book, a Spanish book, the name of which is slipping my mind. Does anyone here remember?
The Club du Mat. Lucas Corso is my spirit animal.
Yeah, thank you. And
what about the other books in the suitcase?
Yeah. So again, Josh was mentioning that, they weren't super valuable. There were two that were. One was Empress Josephine's copy of some court, some
almanac.
Some almanac, which was, Napoleon's, I think, first wife. So that was obviously one of a kind. That was valuable. And there was a signed Finnegan's Wake, all nice books. And then again, like all these other books were, maybe like, probably like maybe 1,000 to 2,500, value.
Yeah.
So not super valuable, but just you can tell like the care was put into these volumes. They have like, book plates of other prominent collectors. So how we ended up with the Keats. So he left us, I think, 35 books. We wrote him a property receipt. We said, we're going to keep them here for research and we're going to do a consignment. When they sell, we'll pay you. You can make more money that way, which is absolutely true, and we do that with some people. But it was really just to keep the books. He showed up a couple of days later after he left the books with us and says, I'm going to take these to another bookseller. Someone else wants to buy them outright. And we're like, well, who is it? And he wouldn't tell us who it was. So not knowing if it was an ABA dealer, not knowing who it was, we were like, I just need to keep the Keats. Like I can't tip him off that that's the valuable one, that's the important one, but we need to figure out how to keep the Keats. So we're arguing back and forth. He was there for like an hour or two where, he's going through this list of booksellers saying, I want to see these books. And of course they're all the best ones. So, we're kind of relinquishing books here and there. And then I was like, I need to do something. I need to come up with some sort of ruse to get him to leave the Keats. So I was looking at, the books, and I was like, I love poetry. I love poetry so much. Which is true. Can you just leave the poetry books here? Like there's maybe 4 or 5 volumes. I want the Finnegan's Wake. I want the Empress Josephine. I want all these books, but you know what? Take those to the bookseller. I will relinquish those if I can just keep these 5. These 5 books, this is Oscar Wilde and Keats and whatever. Like I love poetry so much, and we sell it really well, and we'll pay you well for it. And if we can just keep these 5, I swear I won't give you any trouble. Just take the rest, sell them for good money to whoever you're taking them to. And he agreed. So it worked. We were able to keep the books at that point. And then after that, he came back twice more, right, Josh? Saying, I want my books back.
Well, he came back once more after that. So we had 3 meetings with him after that second one, where he came back and he collected a check from another bookseller. He kind of brought back those leftovers to us, right? Which was like,
the ones that the bookseller didn't buy.
A lot of like the sporting and equestrian, like little leather bound volumes and things like that weren't all that valuable. So he left those with us, right? And then came another unannounced visit. I think that was like Friday of the same week, where I was just there with our assistant, and it's her first week, and this is all going down, and he just shows up. And this was, I felt like, also a very decisive moment for us, was when he just showed up and said, I would like to take everything back. My family wants them back for review. We got to figure out what we want to do with them. And in that moment, like in most circumstances, I think, and anyone would say, all right, well, I don't have any right to hold on to this property, because at this point, we still don't have any proof that they're stolen. But we were suspicious enough, and I think our radar was spot on in this situation, because that's when I had to say to him, I kind of had to put our cards on the table a little bit here and said, look, I don't believe you own these books. So we have 2 options. One, you're welcome to call the police, let them sort it. And, and I'm glad he didn't do that, because they probably would have just said, well, you can't hold his property. You have no proof. So the police probably would have been better for him if he called the police. And then, but then the other option I gave him is just provide us title. You said there's a will. Let's see these books named in this will that you mentioned. And at that point, he left, and the Keats remained with us for up until the DA took over. But what ensued over the next couple weeks was the next time we ended up hearing from this guy was his lawyer called us, and I remember answering that call, and it was a demand to return the books. And at that point, it's like, all right, well, so he has now, legal representation. Well, I know what we have to do now. We need our lawyer to step in, get involved, and buy us some time. And he bought us enough time, so we set out in this journey with Sunday doing all this research, me digging around in police reports, and and going to various meetings, having librarians and other scholars review the book. And we were trying to do everything we can to see if we could uncover someone's name or find a police report where someone is named. So fortunately, it had the right conclusion for us in this case, and our suspicion, in fact, held up. But it was a scary 6 to 8 weeks
My
of
understanding
fighting for
is
this.
my understanding is you actually closed your shop for a week, and
Yeah, we didn't know who this guy was, like, if he was, like, running the book for someone. Like, someone just said, get rid of this, go bring it into the city, get some cash, or whatever. So we didn't know who he might have been connected to and trying to sell the book for. So, we thought, the possibility of a potential theft or someone could get, violent. We didn't know what we were up against. But yet, like even Sunday, would agree that, we were willing to take, honestly, like, put our own personal safety at risk to protect this book. And that's in fact what we did. So yeah, we closed our shop for like a week or so. We updated our security system while the book, resided in our shop.
I think I had recently
yeah,
seen that documentary on the Isabella Stewart Gardner
right.
thefts about the famous art that was stolen that was never recovered. And it's so sad because it's really important artworks. And basically the idea was that, a lot of times it's mafia run. And, when they realize that the items are too hot and they can't resell them and they no longer have value, they destroy them, so no one gets in trouble. So that was my worry, was that, this young guy, who does he work for? We didn't know if there was some sort of mafia connection. We really did not know who he could be representing. So we closed down the office for a little while, worked from home, and just, that's what we did.
Yeah, I mean, actually, that story was in the news last week. It's the anniversary. I think it was 50th anniversary of that theft was last week. So yeah, it's still unsolved. And the rumor, I mean, I grew up knowing this story, but because it's in my market. But there's still conversation about the mafia involved in that theft.
Yeah.
So this has been, well, there is a dramatic conclusion. Should we save it for another episode, maybe? No. Dramatic conclusion is you guys end up on the front page of the New York Times, although you were on a lower fold, but but in fact, a week before the New York Book Fair. Is this not the best timing ever?
We had nothing to do with the timing. Everyone said, "Oh, that was a great PR move." I'm like, we had no idea, because this all happened in January of 2025. So this is over a year ago that this all went down. And, we were calling and asking for, updates from the DA, like, have there been any arrests? Is there anything else? Do you need to testify for the grand jury? And it was just like, no, we're just working the case, no updates. So all of a sudden, 2 weeks before the fair, we get an email saying, we're going to do a press conference and return the book to a Whitney heir who's the rightful owner. Would you like to attend? And we were like, of course we would. Yes, we will be there.
I got blood, sweat, and tears in this. I don't.
Yeah. So we said, yes, we'd love to attend. And they were very nonchalant about it. They were like, oh yeah, we don't know if press is going to come. It was packed. I mean, there were 6 or 8 news stations. There were reporters. There were, people doing, just like written stories. I mean, the room was completely packed, and obviously, like, it got the front page of the New York Times. We did an interview with the reporter there. We did an interview with the reporter for the London Times. That was also a very good article. We're talking more about the recovery of the Keats. We did interviews with Newsday, and I was on the BBC, on air live. So yeah, obviously, like, it's been a wonderful story for rare books, as having value, and booksellers doing the right thing, of
Yeah.
following a hunch and making sure that, the thief doesn't end up with the books. So,
Yeah. I want to make a quick plug here. Within our circle, we all know I'm not an ABA member, but I really hold high regard to the ABAA, always have. I expect I always will. And in fact, this is part of the ethics of the ABAA, and there is a trickle down in those ethics into someone like myself and others who are not members of the ABAA. Most of us are aware of the ethics, and you don't have to be a member to hold on to those ethics. But it's really just it points out that within our business and within our trade, there is honor, there's integrity, uh, and you guys,
Mhm.
you really represent that.
And we've had discussions
Thank
on
you,
this program
Richard.
before
Mhm.
uh, on autograph, on signed copies, and on uh, the ethics of people going and putting somebody's name in the book, when it really wasn't. And last week we discussed Richard's copy of um,
It was
Profiles in Courage,
right.
and um, and how what we thought about that signature. We talked a lot about that last week. So yeah, the ethics question is something. Um, my book club read some short stories um, by Tolles recently, and one of those dealt with fake signatures in books, and we had a discussion on
Mm.
Red Book Cafe about that. So it's something that's very much in the forefront, I think, of reputable dealers, of thefts and of plagiarism and of of all of that whole feel of um, uh, what do you do when these books come across your desk?
And I
yeah.
think
Yeah, y'all just got into it a lot heavier than most of us ever will.
I, I think that it's also very important to remember just how the vigilance is so key here, because it's almost a hilarious joke, just as a sort of a comparison. You folks were able to help solve this extremely cold case through your diligence and vigilance and all of that. There was a book theft actually here in Florida some years ago, at one of the shops here in the Tampa Bay area. And that theft was only eventually solved because the thieves also stole a pair of tortoises from a zoo and were displaying them in their yard in St.
Oh
Petersburg.
my gosh.
That made CNN 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Well,
We probably can't leave this subject without mentioning Nicholas Basbane in his book Gentle Madness. It's a wonderful read. If anybody in the book world hasn't read it, you haven't read a book, because Nicholas is just a marvelous writer himself, and
Mm.
he very well researched, and it's about thefts and fakery within the book trade over the last few
Mhm.
centuries. Um,
Mm.
and there's one wonderful story in that book about a more modern theft, and Nicholas told me that when he interviewed that person about the theft, he eventually got convicted and spent time in jail. And Nicholas
Mm.
actually went to the gentleman's warehouse where he had doorknobs from all kinds of famous places. And when they were walking through, he offered Nicholas one of the doorknobs. And it was an example of the veracity of this kind of subject area. But do read Gentle Madness. It's a great read.
it is. It's a wonderful book.
Yeah,
It is.
yeah.
Well, and I think this shows that uh, some people who've never really thought about that a book from the 1830s could, some people think they're automatically valuable because they're that old. And some people think, well, it can't be worth anything because it's just this old book. And I think this was a good lesson to people about the value of old books, and something that we would like for our customers to understand too that old books can and may not have value.
So
Yeah, for sure.
one
Books,
of the things,
I think I was gonna say books rarely, approach the $1 million mark. It's very rare to
Right.
have a $1 million book, which, in art, that's just commonplace. It's so common. So I think it's nice, yeah, to see that like books placed alongside art and antiques and that sort of,
Yeah.
echelon, which is really nice for people to know that it can happen.
and there's going to be more to the story, I understand it. Like the book is going to actually come back into the market through an auction house, possibly, and that'll be interesting, exciting, and certainly when you were calling around and talking to everybody, all these institutions, they had to be going, "Are you kidding me? You got the? How did you? We want this."
Yeah.
Everyone wanted it. Yeah. Yeah, it is going to be auctioned at Sotheby's. We're disappointed, obviously, just because we wanted more than anything. Well, one, to, return it, but then second of all, to represent it. If the owner eventually did want to say, thanks for returning it, but I'd like to sell it, we were hoping that would be us. But yeah.
I expect you guys will be at the auction.
We'll be there.
Most so we have another little thing we do here. It's a little show and tell. And I wasn't going to do it today, but I actually came across something this weekend, and I'd love to get Josh and Sunday's opinion on this. Um, it's a beautiful leather-bound book, um, nice half cap. It is one of two copies. It's originally by Maxfield Parrish Jr.
Oh,
Yeah, and and Lothrop is the binder, so it's a major house binding it. There's a little story here at the beginning that basically says this is one of two copies, and of the original manuscript that apparently he must have owned, or this person had access
amazing.
to. Yeah,
So
and
is it art, or is it because he
it's
was an
about a
artist, right?
car. There's the title page. It's
Oh
about a
yeah.
car. And the guy,
Oh,
and
wow.
Maxwell Parrish Jr., and there's all kinds of drawings in this about the vehicle, the mechanics, the technology, the engineering. I mean, this is a race car back in the 20s. So this is early race car technology. And the material is created in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. So we get to see the development of it, and it. I, I picked it up in an antique shop on Sunday.
That's cool.
I haven't
Wow.
quite figured out what to do with it yet. Um, don't have. There's nothing online that I could find uh, about it, but because it's connected to Maxfield Parrish, it's his son. Uh, and then in the back, it gets a little more detail in terms of the writing and stuff and the image. So it's just truly, truly a fascinating little thing. I actually haven't sat down and really read it yet. I've got to do that, get a little more familiar with it. But just a masterfully done piece. Um, Beautiful leather binding. What do we know? The little things like this always intrigue us booksellers. Um, but your story has brought and you give a wonderful depth in this story today that wasn't in the New York Times. It was here on Rare Book Cafe.
You heard it here first.
You
Yes.
heard it here first.
We heard it here second, maybe.
And when this gets made into the movie in the credits, I'd like it to
That's
say
right.
Rare Book Cafe and Richard Morey and Lee Lind and Matt Whalen all agreed that this should be a
We
movie.
made it into a movie. Perhaps we can
Absolutely.
help write the script or something.
Right. Yeah. It and I do think Johnny Depp would be a great fit for that
Yeah.
character.
I think so too.
Well, this has been a really fun show, and we just appreciate Sunday and Josh being with us so much, and hope when something else happens exciting, please come back and tell us about it. Any last words from anybody? Obviously
Thanks for
not.
having us. I was just gonna say
Thank
thanks
you
for
very much.
having
Thank you
us.
so
And
much. No,
the
this was really
questions were
fun.
really great. Like, I
Yeah.
think it went into depth because you guys were asking great questions, and obviously there's more to it than than what was reported. So yeah,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah.
you.
Well, We hope you have a long career in the business. You've had a very good, successful career so far, you two. We hope you keep being blessed. And I'm going to guess that I'm going to see you down the road at some book show, maybe even in Florida next year.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Yeah, someday
Please.
we'll talk about that one, but
Yeah,
it'll be fun
we'll
to get
add that.
back there. Yeah.
It'll be great to
Yeah.
add that back in.
Yeah, we'd love to have you up in New Hampshire too, by the way, June 7th in Concord, New
Oh,
Hampshire at the
nice.
Everett Arena. We've got a nice little show, and of course, there'll be other shows during the summer and next fall at the Boston Book Fair. We'll have another show. I mean, we got all kinds of things happening up here. And certainly you got to want to get out of New York just once in a while.
Oh, for sure. No, it's good. Honestly,
Yeah,
we love what we do. We
100%.
love the material, but we love booksellers and we love traveling and we love the book fairs. So, what's not to like?
What's not to like? You're
And
right.
that's what got us into it, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the fun of the biz. Gotta love it. Well, it's been wonderful. Lee, do you want to sign us
Yeah,
out like you
just
usually
to
do?
remind our viewers that you can find Rare Book Cafe on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube, and as a podcast. And we are brought to you in part by the Florida Antiquarian Book Fair. And we stay tuned in for more exciting news from the world of antiquarian books.
Yeah.
And thank you again for being with us today. And we'll see you soon. Bye
Thank you,
bye,
Cindy.
everyone.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.